Okay, and here we are. We are live on Facebook on the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair page, and with me is Barbara Lowe, who is a proprietor of Cardtique. Did I say that right? Cardtique?
Yes, you did.
Yes. In Cardtique is a you specialize in Victorian ephemera. Is that right?
Correct.
So tell me about that. How did you get involved in the collections that you do?
Well, I always loved paper, and as I was going around, I started discovering these wonderful little bits of paper, and started doing more research, and just found it fascinating. Um, I find that ephemera tells a story about our past that we don't often see in textbooks or historical journals and stuff. It actually um, takes us to very specific moments in time and helps us to see what was popular or what was of interest or even sometimes what was historically significant. And so I started as a collector, and then I kind of morphed into a dealer about 8 years ago. And now I've expanded the areas that I deal in beyond just my initial collecting interests. And so I deal with all kinds of ephemera like Valentine's, advertising, um, calendars, prints. I'm looking around at a selection of things that I have, cut paper, different things like that are interesting to me and to other people.
Oh, wonderful. Well, Barbara, what I'd like for you to show us some of the things that you have, but let me tell you one thing that we've learned in the process. All this online live streaming thing is very very new to all of us, very new to a lot of people, I think. And one of the things we've learned is I think on your computer you may see a little light. Do you see a little light, like a little green light, or yes?
Yes.
Look at the light.
Oh, look at the light.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Because what that does, as you can see when you're looking at me, what that does is that it gives the impression of looking at the people, and that makes a much better video. So
Well, I appreciate that feedback.
we've learned to do that. It's hard to get used to, but we've learned to do it. So what do you have to show us today?
Okay. Well, I just came back from the Ephemera Society of America conference in Greenwich, Connecticut, and I found some nice things there, and then other things that I had in my collection. So one of my current treasures is this ticket, which says "Admit the bearer to the Privy Council," and this is dated 1810. Can you see
my, look at that.
And that is actually to George the Second. I'm sorry, George the Third. And so it's a ticket for the person to be able to go really deep into his area and get very close to the king. So that's one thing.
Oh my.
Yes, that's a very rare.
That's very special.
And then this is a Valentine that has lace, and the Victorians were very creative in the things they did. This actually opens up and has a secret little message, if you will, behind the glove.
Oh, look at that.
And so it's a type of thing that would have been from the middle of the 19th century.
Now, on that one, what do you know about the printing process and how that was created?
Well, I'm not an expert in that area.
Is it hand colored or?
Yes.
It's
Well,
hand.
no, this particular one is not. I have
Okay.
a lot that are. This one actually uses die cut scraps.
Oh, okay.
So but they're all handmade. What they would do is get the lace blank, and I don't know if you can see the lace
I can. Mm-hmm. Wow.
here. And then they would get these scraps and apply them and make the designs.
Oh, okay.
And so each one is slightly different than the other. They would have similar design styles, but they're all individual and different.
Oh my.
Now, here's an example of one that is hand colored, and this is a movable one. And this actually shows a gentleman holding the baby. And let me get the little mechanism here. And he can rock the baby.
So that's early movable books, or that I guess they use that technique on into doing books.
Yes, and this is from approximately 1840, and this is hand colored.
Oh, okay.
So those are two examples of Valentines, and I have quite a number of those. Here's another Valentine that is later.
Oh, look at that.
This is a three-dimensional one.
Very elaborate.
I don't know if you can see the honeycomb effect, but what it does is it allows it to stand, and you can actually see the people in the bus. So, and this would have been in the early 20th century.
Okay.
So those are some examples of some Valentines that I have. Then I have advertising trade cards. And so you see some that people are probably familiar with, like the Heinz pickle cards.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get into a little bit more unusual type things. This is a French one for a biscuit company, which in the United States we call a cookie.
Right.
And again, this is an Art Deco style advertising card.
So is that about the 20s?
No, this would have been earlier. This would have been in around the 1890s to 1900.
Okay.
That era. That we refer to as vegetable people, although in this particular case, they're seafood. And you've got the gentleman who's a lemon and the lady who's an oyster. And there were a whole series of cards like that where they would turn either the vegetables or the seafoods or whatever into characters and build scenes.
Sort of Veggie Tales.
Yeah.
Early Veggie Tales.
Early version of that. But here's another example. And this is one of the things that's so striking about this is that the chromolithography, the colors are so vibrant.
Oh,
and,
they are, aren't they?
You know, you're looking at something that's 125 years old, and yet it looks, vibrant as if it came off the press quite recently.
Wow.
And then there were all kinds of weird gimmicks and things. Here's one for magnetized food, because if we magnetize something, it must be better.
Oh, right. That was a precursor to pasteurize, right?
Yeah, maybe so. There were a lot of patent medicines and medical quackery type things that they had. Here's an example of a menu card from Liebig, and they made a beef paste. And these are very rare. You can see it's cut, and that was so that you could attach it to the place setting where it was, and then they would put down who it was that was supposed to be sitting there, and they might put some of the items of the menu, and then on the back it advertises for the meat paste. And these are very rare to have survived intact and be all in one piece.
So then that would have been made for the consumer, for the housewife to be able to use to for the
her
dinner
dinner
party.
party.
Is that right?
Hopefully she was serving the Liebig meat paste on the card. Yes. And what they would do is some of these cards would be packaged with a product. So, like as an example, if you bought tea or coffee or chocolate, they were very famous for doing it. They would package like a pound of coffee, and then you'd get a card with it.
Mm-hmm.
The idea would be there'd be like a series of 50 cards, and you'd come back and buy their brand again because you could get more cards.
Oh my!
And that was one of their gimmicks to get you to establish brand loyalty.
Right.
And so they did a lot of things like that. Here's another example of a combination of advertising and a practical thing, because it's got a calendar and it's got the 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
Each page has different points about the product that they're trying to show.
Mm-hmm.
And so you would be constantly reminded as you use the calendar all year that about this particular product, or the company, in this case, Altman Miller and Company.
And what did they make?
They did mowers, lawn mowers, and different equipment that you would use to maintain the yard or the farm.
Oh, okay.
And these were considered luxury items.
Mm-hmm.
So, your card that you'd get with a pound of coffee, that was an everyday consumer item. And there were cards for thread and things like that. But when you started getting into things like lawn mowers or farm equipment, here's one showing an elaborate piece of farm equipment, then
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about some very expensive luxury items, and they were trying to encourage you to use their brand.
So it was important for them to keep their brand in front of the homeowner.
Mm-hmm. And then here's another example of the type of thing that they would do. They would do a series of alphabet cards. So these are showing their advertising for the company. The ad is on the back, but the idea was that you would get, again, the series of cards because you'd be doing your alphabet and they could use them with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another example of an advertising card. Then you had luxury items like perfume, and this is an item, a Rimmel almanac pocket calendar book. And this is from 1887. It's called Love's Labor's Lost. And it would open up, and you'd have all different types of scenes where people would be using the Rimmel products. And then it would have all kinds of helpful information. Whoops. That, so you'd have your decorative scenes here, but here's your calendar and your helpful information.
Now, of course, that's a Shakespeare play. Is that
Labor's Lost? Yes.
Yes. Is that are the scenes? Are they at all built around Shakespeare?
I don't think they all are. I think that that was just kind of their way to promote their product, was to associate it with Shakespeare.
A familiar title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, okay, so here's another example going in a different direction, also a calendar card, but very different. And this is, I'm sorry, I'm going to take it out of the plastic so that you can see it more clearly. This is a Chinese calendar, and you can see on the back.
Oh my. Okay.
There it is in Chinese. but it was advertising tobacco products that were being introduced into the Chinese market.
Okay.
This is from about 1909.
Like
And
pirate brand, is that what it says?
yes, pirate brand cigarettes. Because we really want to take all our good, healthy things and market them abroad. Here's another item that I recently got. This is a letterhead. Actually, I'm sorry, it's a receipt. And it's for Thomas Jones, mathematician. And it's from 1823. And I don't know if you can see, I'm going to try and get this real close. But there you can see the individuals using sextants on the ship. Can you see it there? And so this is just an incredible piece of engraving. This is English as well. And it's so it's a receipt for from that company. Very rare item.
So that was was that part of the curriculum? The how to use a sextant?
It could have been. It could have been. I haven't done any research. I just picked that up on Sunday, so I haven't had a chance to do any research on it yet. But here's another item that's a hand-colored front piece to a scrapbook that someone was putting together. And that was very popular in the 1880s and the 1890s. That, you know, we have to think back to that time period. There was no TV, there was no radio, there was very little electric light, you know, and so people had to think of things to engage themselves in the evening. And one of the things they did was they put together scrapbooks. And sometimes there would be, you know, hand-colored things like this. But lots of times they would use those trade cards that I showed you earlier, and they would put together scrapbooks and design them. And some of them are very artistic, and they still survive today. People find them in their attics and are passed down from, you know, the grandparents or the great-grandparents. And so they're very popular items. Then I also have, let's see, here's an example of a Chinese book that is telling the story in an accordion fashion. And, but it's all hand done and just beautiful images. And that would be, you know, they would tell the story that way.
So now, you just turned that around, didn't you? So that not only does it go in one direction, but then it goes in the other direction.
Yeah, yeah.
So, very nice.
So that's, you know, the thing about ephemera is it covers a wide range of items. So here's an example of something that I'll have at the show. And these are color prints from George Catlin, and he was a artist that came over from London and traveled all over the West, and he did a series of lots of these Indian Native American tribes, and just really showing them in all their glory. You know, not the cartoonish type things that we tend to think of that we saw in our childhood, but really just how regal and wonderful they were in their own environment. And so these also date back into the late 19th century.
Wow.
And so that's some examples. Then I also have some small books that I don't go into books in the same way that other people do, but every now and then I find some that are fun. This is The Swindler of America with an introduction by P.T. Barnum. And
of course.
I laugh because he's the biggest swindler of them all. And
takes one to know one, right?
Not really.
So, what kinds of tips are there in that book? What does he suggest?
Oh, on how to make money? Well, let's see, get a pack of Revelation fortune telling cards is in here, the art of money getting. There's, and it talks about quack medicines and, just all kinds of things. But it's a fun little piece of American history that we don't always see.
That's
Kind
great.
of at the opposite spectrum, here's the Gentleman's Pocketbook of Etiquette.
Ah, okay.
So you know exactly how you should behave in certain circumstances. And that one goes through and it talks about your introduction to society and, how your dress should be, recognitions and salutations, how to receive company, what to do in the ballroom and music. So it's, a handy little pocket guide for the gentleman. And then another example of things that I sell are, speaking of the ballroom, are the dance card books. So that when you would go to a dance, the lady would have a little booklet and the gentleman would sign in for which dance they wanted to have with the gentleman. And so those have survived, and I have quite a few of those as well. And of course, we're here in Florida, so we don't want to ignore Mickey.
Oh, of course.
So this is the first one of the books that they put out, and it's a very nice little look back at the Disney history. But this is the Mickey that Walt Disney designed, not the version that we see today. So that's a nice piece.
Is it what year is that one?
I believe that was 1938. I took it out of the let's see, I'm sorry, 1931.
1931. So early in the life of Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, and that was that was the first year that they started doing the little books.
Oh, good.
Just various interesting things that I come across and look at. I'm looking around. I've got things everywhere. Back in the show. Here's an example of cut paper, where they would take paper items and they would cut out the designs. And I don't know if you can see that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is actually considered a reward of merit, because the teacher did this and presented it for some sort of an achievement that they made at school. And let's see, this one just says the date. It's looks to me like, oh my gosh, I don't have my magnifying glass here, but it looks to me like it's 1844, and it's got the teacher's name on it and the presentation date. So here's another one that is an example. But there were tremendous things that have survived through the years, and they just give us an insight into the past that I think is missed by a lot of other people. If you just look at history through a textbook, you really miss a lot. You miss the real stories of the people and the activities and what their life is like. And that's one of the things I love about ephemera.
Barbara, thank you so much for being with us. And you are going to be at the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair at April 21st, 22nd,
yes,
and 23rd. Do you know what your booth number is yet?
I don't.
Oh, that's all right.
But I will be the one with mostly ephemera. Very few books. So I'm excited to be participating in this, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, we can't wait till we get to the book fair. It's always a fun time every year, and we always find new and exciting things. And it looks to me like your booth is going to be one that has a lot of those new and exciting things. So we're looking forward to seeing you there.
All right. Well, I'm excited about it myself. So we'll see you next month.
Okay. Thank you so much for being with us. And I'm going to now try to sign off here.
Okay.